Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we plunge into the heart of fascinating material to unearth the knowledge and insights that truly matter. You've sent us a stack of pretty profound sources, and our mission today really is to distill the core wisdom that can transform how you approach challenges in your life, your relationships, maybe even your work. We're going to unpack why so many of our, quick fixes fall short and where real lasting change actually begins.
That's right. We're moving beyond just surface level advice here. We want to explore the foundational principles that really drive long-term success and genuine happiness. And these aren't just abstract ideas, are they? They apply directly to some of the most challenging areas of our lives, from personal struggles to complex interpersonal dynamics.
Absolutely. And think about those persistent problems, the ones that really nag at you. Maybe a marriage that feels flat. Or perhaps you're struggling with a child's self-esteem, despite all your best efforts. Or even that feeling at work that your influence just isn't what it could be. Today, we're going to dive into why those typical attempts at improvement often miss the mark. And, crucially, where truly profound change starts.
Yeah, it's about more than just changing what we do. It's about shifting how we see the world, our underlying perspective, you could say, our lens, and recognizing how that lens shapes our reality. Well, that's where the real aha moments happen. Personal effectiveness. For interpersonal stuff, too. Often the real problem isn't the situation itself. It's our internal map of it, our understanding.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Our sources kick off with a really powerful and I think quite relatable anecdote. It highlights this illusion of the quick fix perfectly. Imagine a parent genuinely concerned about their son. He was having a really tough time in school. Academically, he struggled, couldn't follow test instructions properly. Socially, he seemed immature for his age. And even in sports, he was uncoordinated, swinging the baseball bat way too early. And kids would laugh, and the parents, understandably, would reprimand them. Now, these parents, they had the best intentions, obviously. They poured all their energy into helping, and they tried encouragement, lots of you can do it type stuff. And they rewarded small improvements, gave lengthy reinforcement. But the boy would just cry, totally convinced he'd never be any good. Nothing seemed to help. And they were really worried about his self-esteem. They were essentially trying to fix the fruit without looking at the root. Right?
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is how this very personal struggle led to a profound professional insight for one of the parents. This parent was also involved in leadership development, working with IBM executives, and their research digging into things like expectancy theory, the idea that our expectations can shape outcomes, and the Pygmalion effect, which shows how higher expectations can lead to better performance. Well, this research revealed something critical. It became clear that their conscious efforts to be positive with their son, they were being completely undermined by a deeper, often unconscious perception, a perception that their son was somehow inadequate.
Wow. So there was this internal contradiction, this disconnect between what they were doing and what they unconsciously believed.
Precisely. And that led to a massive aha moment for them, the realization of the powerful impact of what the sources call the personality ethic versus the character ethic.
Okay, personality ethic versus character ethic. Let's break that down. The personality ethic, as the sources explain it, focuses on those surface traits, right? Things like communication skills, influence tactics, positive thinking, stuff you can learn techniques for.
Exactly. And those things aren't bad in themselves. They can be beneficial, sometimes essential even. But, and this is the critical distinction, they are secondary traits.
Secondary, meaning they aren't the foundation.
Right. The core insight here is that if your character, your fundamental self is flawed, maybe by insincerity or dishonesty, then no amount of charming rhetoric or positive attitude techniques will lead to lasting success. Duplicity breeds distrust. And when there's distrust, even good techniques can feel manipulative. The source puts it so powerfully. Only basic goodness gives life to technique.
Only basic goodness gives life to technique. That's strong.
Isn't it? It's like cramming for a test in school. You might get a good grade, maybe.
Yeah.
But you haven't truly developed an educated mind. You haven't built the foundation. It's a shortcut that ultimately doesn't build anything real or lasting.
So what does this mean for us, practically speaking? How does this play out?
Well, it ties directly into what the sources call the law of the harvest.
The law of the harvest, okay.
Think about it like farming. You can't just slack off all summer, skip the planting and cultivating, and then suddenly decide to cram for a harvest in the fall. It just doesn't work that way. Human behavior, human relationships, they operate on similar natural laws. You really do reap what you sow.
So those personality ethic techniques, the charm, the quick influence tactics, they might work sometimes.
Maybe in the short term.
Yeah.
And a quick one-off interaction, perhaps, like making a good first impression. Charm can work there, but they lack any permanent worth in long-term relationships.
Because the foundation isn't there.
Exactly. Without deep integrity, without that character strength, life's inevitable challenges will eventually expose your true motives. And that leads to relationship failure, despite any initial perceived success. This distinction the sources make between primary greatness, which is goodness of character, and secondary greatness, which is more like social recognition for talents, is crucial.
Primary versus secondary greatness.
Yeah. Many people achieve that secondary greatness, the recognition, the status. But if they lack primary greatness, that fundamental goodness, it inevitably shows. It shows in all their long-term relationships, business, marriage, friendships, even with their own kids. As Emerson wisely put it, "What you are shouts so loudly in my ears that I cannot hear what you say."
Wow. What you are shouts so loudly. That really hits home. Our character is our true message.
It really is. It communicates far more eloquently than anything we actually say or do. Trust comes from character.
Okay, that's a powerful point. And it brings us, I think, to the very core of our deep dive today, which is the power of a paradigm shift. The sources tell us that these fundamental principles of human effectiveness, what they call the 7 habits, they require us to first understand our own paradigms. Now, paradigm is a word we hear a lot, but in this context, what does it really mean?
Yeah, it's a term borrowed from science originally. But here it basically means a model, a theory, a perception, an assumption, or just your frame of reference. In a broader sense, it's how we see the world. Not literally, with our eyes, but in terms of how we perceive, understand, and interpret everything around us. It's our mental map.
Our mental map. Okay, I like that analogy.
And it helps to think of it that way, because as the famous saying goes, the map is not the territory.
The map isn't the place itself.
Exactly. So imagine you're trying to get to a specific spot in, say, Chicago, but you've accidentally been given a map of Detroit. Now, you could try harder, right? Be more diligent, focus, maybe even double your speed work on your behavior. You could even try to think more positively, work on your attitude. I will find this place. But despite all that effort, you'd still be lost. Or maybe you just get to the wrong place faster.
Because the map is fundamentally wrong.
Precisely. The problem isn't your effort or your attitude in that case. It's having the wrong map. Your underlying paradigm is flawed.
So it sounds like we can apply all the techniques in the world, all the effort. But if our fundamental understanding of the situation, our map, our paradigm is off, we're just spinning our wheels, aren't we? Wasting energy.
You got it. And that's exactly why the glitter of the personality ethic is so appealing to so many people. It promises quick, easy ways to achieve a quality life, to get the results you want, without going through the natural, often challenging process of work and growth. It's like offering symbol without substance, a kind of get-rich-quick scheme for personal development.
Symbol without substance. That resonates with Erich Fromm's observation mentioned in the sources too, about people behaving like automatons, where meaningless chatter has replaced communicative speech and that synthetic smile has replaced genuine laughter. It highlights a sort of hollowness.
A deep hollowness, yes. A deception. Because life, real growth, involves sequential stages. Much like a child learning to walk or someone learning to play the piano, each step is important. It takes its own time. And fundamentally, you cannot skip steps. This holds true not just physically, but emotionally, in our relationships, in character development.
We try to shortcut it though, don't we?
We do. We often look for shortcuts in human relations, hoping to bypass vital steps to save time and effort. But what happens if you're, say, an average tennis player, and you try to compete against a professional armed only with positive thinking?
You get crushed.
Right. Or if you lead friends to believe you're a concert pianist when you're really just a beginner.
The truth comes out eventually.
Exactly. It's impossible to sustain that pretense for long. This attempt to shortcut the natural process only leads to disappointment and frustration. The first step in any genuine growth, the sources argue, is often admitting ignorance. As Thoreau apparently put it, how can we remember our ignorance, which our growth requires, when we are using our knowledge all of the time?
That's a great quote. And this resistance to taking the first step, to admitting where we really are, it's so common. I remember that anecdote from the sources about the father whose daughters were tearfully complaining about his harshness. Intellectually, he knew he had a temper problem, but his pride kept him from admitting his emotional development level was, well, low. It's much easier to dispense high-level advice than to truly listen, isn't it? That takes real emotional strength, patience, openness.
It absolutely does. And while you might be able to pose or put on a front for a stranger or in a short-term interaction, that pretense simply cannot last in deep, ongoing relationships. Our true selves eventually emerge, which often means the problem, the real problem, lies in how we see things, our paradigms.
And this applies in the business world too, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely. The sources mention executives trying to buy a new culture of productivity. They use speeches, maybe smile training, while completely ignoring the low-trust climate their own manipulations might be creating. And when these superficial methods inevitably fail, what do?
They look for more techniques.
Often, yes, more personality ethic techniques. They keep violating the natural principles upon which a high-trust culture is actually built. It reminds me of that story of the father at his daughter's third birthday party. Remember that?
Yes, the one with the presents. He was embarrassed because she was clutching all her gifts and wouldn't share.
Right. And his immediate reaction was to try and force her to share. He lectured her on the value of it. But in that highly emotional atmosphere, his attempt to teach to get the result he wanted, P reproduction, it was perceived as judgment. It damaged the relationship, PC production capability.
You know, that story really sticks with me. I think almost every parent can relate to that moment, where you prioritize the immediate result, the sharing, the compliance over the relationship itself, without even realizing it in the heat of the moment. The sources suggest, don't they, that maybe a sense of possessing something needs to come before genuine sharing can happen.
Exactly. Forcing a temporary result, like getting the child to hand over a toy under duress, doesn't build the internal character, nor does it build the relationship. True growth often requires patience, allowing a child that sense of security, that sense of ownership first, before you can effectively teach the value of giving, maybe mostly by example.
And that just reinforces this incredibly profound point again. The problem isn't just the problem itself.
But the way we see the problem, our paradigm about it.
Right. The sources bring up those common frustrations again. Employees lacking loyalty despite management training seminars, feeling constantly pressured despite time management workshops, a marriage going flat despite couples counseling.
And in each case, the personality ethic tends to suggest external fixes. More training, better techniques, different counseling methods. But the real issue might be much deeper. It might be the manager's fundamental view of their employees, or your own flawed paradigm about what time is or how it should be managed, or a core belief about what love or marriage is supposed to look like, which might not align with reality.
This is where we need that new level of thinking that Einstein talked about. The significant problems we face cannot be solved at the same level of thinking we were at when we created them.
Precisely. We need to go deeper than just adjusting our behavior or attitude. This new level, this deeper approach, is what the framework calls a principle-centered, character-based, inside-out approach to effectiveness.
Inside out. Okay, what does that mean exactly?
It means starting with the most inside part of yourself, your paradigms, your character, your motives. That's the starting point. So if you want a happy marriage, the inside-out approach says you must first be the kind of person who generates positive energy, understanding, and love. If you want a more cooperative teenager, you must first be a more understanding, empathetic, consistent, loving parent.
So it starts with being rather than doing or having.
Exactly. If you want trust, you must be trustworthy. If you want secondary greatness, the recognition you focus first on primary greatness, your character. This approach emphasizes that private victories, things like self-mastery, making and keeping promises to ourselves, these fundamentally precede public victories. Public victories being successful relationships, teamwork, external achievements. It's truly futile, the sources argue, to try and put personality ahead of character.
So it's a continuous process, inside out.
Yes, a continuous process of renewal. It's grounded in what the sources call natural laws of human growth. It's an upward spiral towards greater independence first, and then towards effective interdependence.
And this contrasts with the outside-in approach.
Sharply. The sources note that lasting solutions, real happiness, genuine success, rarely come from an outside-in paradigm. That outside-in approach often leads people to feel victimized, immobilized, blaming others or circumstances. You see it in unhappy marriages where each spouse points the finger at the other, or in labor disputes where each side tries to force the other through legislation or pressure rather than building trust. This outside-in thinking, where everyone believes the problem is out there with the other side, is prevalent even in major global conflicts.
Okay, so shifting to inside out is fundamental. And this framework talks about habits. How are habits defined here? It's not just routine, is it?
No, it's more comprehensive. A habit in this context is defined as the intersection of three crucial components. First, knowledge, the theoretical part, the what to do and why. Second, skill, the practical part, the how to do it. And third, desire, the motivational part, the want to do it.
Knowledge, skill, and desire. All three are needed.
All three are essential. You need to know why something is important, knowledge, how to actually do it, skill, and you need the genuine motivation to do it, desire. The real breakthrough often comes when you truly want to align your actions with your deepest values. Without that want to, it's just willpower, which, eventually runs dry. Working on all three, knowledge, skill, and desire, is how we break through to new levels of effectiveness and make these principles habitual.
Got it. So what does this journey, this progression towards effectiveness look like in our lives? You mentioned independence and interdependence.
Yes, the sources describe it using the maturity continuum.
Yeah.
We all start as infants, completely dependent on others. Then, ideally, we gradually move towards independence, physically, mentally, emotionally, financially. This stage of independence, where you can essentially take care of yourself, become inner-directed, self-reliant, that's certainly a worthy and liberating goal. It frees us from being overly controlled by circumstances or other people's weaknesses.
But independence isn't the end goal.
According to this framework, no. True independence is not the ultimate goal for truly effective living, because life, by its very nature, is interdependent. We need others. Trying to achieve maximum effectiveness solely through independence is like, the analogy used is trying to play tennis with a golf club. It's the wrong tool for the reality of the game.
So what's interdependence then?
Interdependence is a far more mature, more advanced concept. It means you are self-reliant and capable. That's the independent foundation. But you also recognize that working together with others can accomplish far, far more than you could alone. It's recognizing the need for love, the need to give and receive, the need to combine your best thinking with the best thinking of others.
And here's the crucial part I remember reading. Interdependence is a choice, right?
Yes. And it's a choice that only independent people can truly make. Dependent people, those who haven't achieved that basic self-mastery, they lack the character, the self-possession, the inner security. They don't really own enough of themselves, as the source puts it, to genuinely choose interdependence. They might need it, but they can't freely choose it from a place of strength.
Okay. That explains the sequence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is precisely why the first three habits in this framework, ones focusing on things like proactivity, vision, and self-management, are called the private victories. They deal with self-mastery. They move a person from dependence to independence. You simply cannot harvest a crop before you plant and nurture it. It's always an inside-out process.
Private victories first, then public victories.
That's the sequence. Once you're truly independent, once you've achieved those private victories and built that solid character base, then you have the foundation for effective interdependence. And that enables the public victories, the habits focused on teamwork, cooperation, communication, synergy habits 4, 5, and 6. It's a sequential, incremental process of growth, one that builds on itself naturally.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, as we dig even deeper into these principles, the sources introduce another really powerful metaphor. The PPC balance, or, as it's more famously known, the goose and the golden egg.
Ah, yes, a classic, and absolutely fundamental to understanding effectiveness. P stands for production. That's the golden eggs, the desired results, the output, the profits, whatever you're aiming for. PC stands for production capability. That's the goose itself, the asset, the resource, the ability to produce those golden eggs. This could be a physical asset, a financial asset, or critically, a human asset like relationships, employee well-being, customer trust.
So effectiveness isn't just about getting the eggs.
No. Effectiveness lies in maintaining a balance, the PPC balance. It's about producing results, P, while also maintaining and nurturing the ability to produce those results, PC. You can't just focus on maximizing the golden eggs right now without taking care of the goose that lays them.
Can you give an example of how that plays out?
Sure. Let's take a physical asset, like a machine in a factory. A manager focused only on short-term production, P, might run that machine 24/7, pushing it to its limits with no maintenance. Production figures might look phenomenal initially, maybe they even get promoted, but their successor inherits a very sick goose, a machine that's rusted, breaking down, requiring huge investment. PC has been destroyed.
Yeah.
The predecessor essentially liquidated the asset for short-term gain.
So it's that classic short-term thinking again, sacrificing the future for an immediate win.
Precisely. And this balance is particularly vital, arguably most vital, when it applies to the human assets. Think about customers, employees. Neglecting the PC, the relationships, the trust, the well-being, for the sake of short-term P like immediate profits or efficiency targets, it ultimately destroys the very ability to produce results in the long run. You burn out your people, you alienate your customers, the goose dies.
The sources connect this back to that parenting story too, right? The birthday party?
Yes, perfectly. The parent was embarrassed by their 3-year-old daughter clinging to her presents. The immediate goal was getting her to share P production. But trying to force it in that emotionally charged moment, prioritize the P over the relationship, the trust, the child's feeling of security, the PC production capability. Teaching effectively, building PC requires the right timing and a good relationship, not just force aimed at an immediate result.
It really highlights that idea of, times to teach and times not to teach. When relationships are strained or the emotional bank account is low, teaching often just lands as judgment, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And the sources suggest, as we touched on, that maybe that sense of possessing needs to come before genuine sharing. Trying to force a temporary result doesn't build the internal character, PC, or strengthen the relationship, PC. True growth, building that PC, requires patience, allowing a child that sense of security before effectively teaching the value of giving, often best done by example.
And this circles back again to that really profound point. Maybe the problem isn't just the problem.
But the way we see the problem, our focus. Are we focused only on the golden eggs, P, or are we nurturing the goose PC?
Right, because many people, the sources say, look for those quick fix techniques precisely because they want to relieve immediate pain. They focus on the social aspirin and Band-Aids for the acute problem, the symptom.
Exactly. They ask, how do you do it? Teach me the techniques, hoping for a quick fix for the P problem. They often don't want to hear about the deeper principles the PC investment required. The consequence is that this focus on just alleviating the symptom often contributes to the underlying chronic condition. It neglects the goose.
But the PPC balance, it seems to hold true everywhere.
It's validated in every arena of life, the sources argue. Think about your health. Burn the candle at both ends. Focus only on P getting things done. You wind up sick, destroying PC your health. Get a good night's sleep, exercise, eat well, invest in PC. You wake up refreshed and productive, better P. Think about relationships. Force your way, demand things, focus on P. You might get compliance but feel an emptiness, low PC. Genuinely invest time. Listen, understand, invest in PC. Communication improves, trust grows, better P long term. The principle is always at play. It's the very essence of effectiveness. It's like a lighthouse, the sources say, a fixed principle guiding our actions.
Okay, that PPC balance is a critical lens. So how do we actually begin this inside-out journey? Where's the starting point?
It starts with habit 1, be proactive.
Be proactive. Okay, what does that really mean in this context?
Fundamentally, it means taking responsibility for our own lives. Recognizing that we are responsible, meaning we have the ability, the freedom, to choose our response to any situation, regardless of the circumstances or stimulus. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose our response.
So our feelings don't have to control our actions.
Exactly. Our feelings don't control our actions unless we abdicate our responsibility and empower them to do so. Proactive people subordinate feelings to values. Love, for instance, is presented not merely as a feeling that comes and goes, but as a verb, something you do. Love is about making sacrifices, giving, choosing to act lovingly, even when you don't feel like it, because it aligns with your deeper values.
Choosing your response. How can we tell if we're being proactive or reactive?
A fantastic way to gauge your own degree of proactivity, the sources suggest, is by looking at where you focus your time and energy. Think about 2 circles. Your circle of concern contains everything you care about, but have little or no real control over things like, the national debt, nuclear war, maybe other people's weaknesses or choices. In contrast, your circle of influence contains those things you can actually do something about, primarily your own behavior, your attitudes, your choices, your responses.
Circle of concern versus circle of influence. And how do proactive people use these?
Proactive people consistently focus their time and energy on their circle of influence. They work on the things they can change themselves. This generates positive energy, builds their competence, and actually enlarges their circle of influence over time. Reactive people, on the other hand, tend to focus on their circle of concern. They dwell on the weaknesses of others, the problems out there, circumstances they can't control. This leads to blaming, accusing, feeling like a victim, and ultimately their circle of influence shrinks because they neglect the areas where they do have agency.
That's a really useful distinction. I can see how easy it is to get caught up in the circle of concern. We often fill it with haves, don't we? I'll be happy when I have my house paid off, or if only I had a boss who wasn't so demanding. We place our happiness and effectiveness on external conditions changing.
Exactly. That's reactive language, driven by conditions. The circle of influence, however, is filled with B's. I can be more patient. I can be more wise. I can be more loving. I can be more resourceful. It's a character focus, an inside-out focus, not a circumstance focus. The very thought, the problem is out there, is the problem, according to this framework, because that thought itself empowers external factors to control us.
So the proactive approach is always inside out.
Always. To be different, and by being different, to affect positive change out there in your circumstances or influence. The sources use the powerful example of Joseph from the Old Testament. Sold into slavery, falsely accused, unjustly imprisoned, talk about difficult circumstances, circle of concern stuff. But he focused on his circle of influence. He focused on being the best servant, the best administrator, the most diligent, the most trustworthy person he could be within those circumstances. And eventually, his circle of influence grew dramatically.
So no matter the problem, the first step is always in our circle of influence.
That's the argument. Problems fall into three areas. Direct control, our own behavior solved by changing our habits, working on private victories. Indirect control, other people's behavior solved by changing our methods of influence, working on public victories. And no control, things from the past or situational realities solved by accepting them peacefully, changing our attitude like the serenity prayer. In all three cases, the crucial first step to the solution lies within our circle of influence, changing ourselves, our habits, our attitudes, our methods of influence.
The sources challenge us, the listener, to try a 30-day test of proactivity, don't they?
They do. It's a practical challenge. For 30 days, commit to working only in your circle of influence. Make small commitments to yourself and keep them rigorously. Build that integrity muscle. Be a light, not a judge. Be a model, not a critic. Be part of the solution, not part of the problem. When you make a mistake, because you will admit it quickly, correct it if possible, and most importantly, learn from it. Don't rationalize or blame, and look at the weaknesses of others with compassion, not accusation. Focus on your response.
And the key is, if you start to think the problem is out there,
Stop yourself immediately. Recognize that that very thought is the problem. It's reactive thinking. It disempowers you. This challenge underscores a profound truth. We are responsible for our own effectiveness, our own happiness, and ultimately for most of our circumstances through our chosen responses. As Samuel Johnson observed, trying to find happiness by changing anything but your own disposition is pretty much a fruitless effort.
that proactive foundation seems crucial. So, building on that, we move to habit 2. Begin with the end in mind. What's the core idea here?
Habit 2 is based on the principle that all things are created twice.
Created twice.
Yes. There's a mental or first creation, and then there's a physical or second creation. Think about building a house. Before you hammer the first nail, before any physical work starts, you create it in detail in your mind. You envision it, you design it, you create blueprints. That's the first creation. If you don't do that thorough first creation, if you just start building, you'll inevitably face expensive changes and rework during the physical second creation.
Okay, so the mental blueprint comes first. How does this apply more broadly?
It applies everywhere. For a successful business, you need a clear first creation, defining the product or service, the market target, the business plan, before you start organizing resources and producing the second creation. In parenting, if your end goal is to raise responsible, independent, caring children, the first creation, you have to keep that end clearly in mind during your daily interactions, decisions, and discipline, the second creation. Even planning a trip, designing a garden, writing a speech, we do it mentally first.
And the extent to which we take responsibility for that first creation, that affects our proactivity.
Absolutely. It directly impacts our circle of influence. If we don't consciously design our own first creation, if we don't take responsibility for our own vision and values, then by default, we empower other people and circumstances outside our circle of influence to shape our lives. We end up reactively living out scripts handed down by family, peers, societal pressures, or past conditioning, rather than writing our own.
This sounds like where the distinction between leadership and management becomes really important.
Critically important. Habit 2 is fundamentally about leadership, which is the first creation. Habit 3, which we'll get to, is about management, the second creation. Leadership is primarily a high-powered, right-brain activity. It's about asking the ultimate questions. What do we want to accomplish? What's truly important? What's our purpose, our direction, our vision? Critically, leadership asks, Are we even in the right jungle?
While management is about,
Management is primarily a left brain activity. It's about efficiency, organization, execution, climbing the ladder of success. Management asks, how can we climb this ladder most efficiently? How do we best organize to get to the right jungle?
hmm,
But as the sources offer that stark analogy, efficient management without effective leadership is like straightening deck chairs on the Titanic.
ouch. So, no amount of efficiency matters if you're headed in fundamentally the wrong direction.
Precisely. No management success can compensate for leadership failure. You might be incredibly efficient at climbing the ladder, but if it's leaning against the wrong wall, every step just takes you to the wrong place faster. And the challenge, the sources point out, is that we're often trapped in a management paradigm. We're focused on efficiency, control, rules, time management techniques. Even in our personal and family lives, we often manage rather than lead.
Is there an example of shifting from management to leadership?
Yes, the sources share a powerful anecdote from an oil company president. He realized he was constantly buried by pressing challenges and putting out fires classic management mode. He never really stopped to lead, to ask the big directional question. So he deliberately withdrew with his management team for several days to wrestle with direction issues. Pure leadership, the first creation. The result: a redefined mission, a shared vision, and ultimately dramatically increased revenues and quadrupled profits because they finally ensured the ladder was against the right wall.
So how do we actually do this first creation for ourselves? How do we write our own script?
The sources say we have unique human endowments that enable us to do this. We've mentioned self-awareness, the foundation for proactivity. But we also have imagination, the ability to visualize possibilities, to create beyond our present reality in our minds. And we have conscience, that inner moral sense, our connection to universal principles and our own unique talents and guidelines. Combined with self-awareness, these empower us to examine the scripts we might be living by and consciously re-script our lives based on our own chosen values.
And this leads to the idea of a personal mission statement.
Exactly. Habit 2 is fundamentally about creating a personal mission statement or philosophy. Its purpose is to be your personal constitution. It gives clear verbal expression to your unique identity, your deepest values, your vision, and your desired directions. It's not something you dash off in an afternoon. It requires deep introspection, careful analysis, thoughtful expression, and often many rewrites until it truly feels right, until it's a complete and concise expression of your innermost self.
It sounds like the ultimate act of proactivity, defining your own purpose.
It really is. As Viktor Frankl emphasized, and the sources echo, we don't just find meaning out there. We detect it. We create it within ourselves. Seeking meaning abstractly in the circle of concern is abdicating our proactive responsibility. Our true meaning comes from within, from answering life's question by being responsible for our own life.
And once you have this mission statement, this vision, how do you make it practical? How do you live it daily?
That's where tools like visualization and affirmation come in, as mentioned in the sources. A good affirmation, to be effective in reprogramming yourself, should have 5 basic ingredients. It's personal. It's positive, stating what you want, not what you don't. It's present tense, as if it's already happening. It's visual, creating a mental image. And it's emotional, connecting feelings to it.
Can you give an example?
Sure. That parent wanting to stop overreacting to their kids might create an affirmation like, "It is deeply satisfying emotional that I personally respond," present tense, "with wisdom, love, firmness, and self-control, positive, when my children misbehave." Then, by regularly visualizing scenarios where they respond this way, visual, feeling the satisfaction, emotional, they help write the program in harmony with their values. Over time, this can dramatically change their actual behavior.
That connects back to the idea of paradigms, too. The source of our security, guidance, wisdom, and power.
Absolutely. How we center our lives dictates our paradigms, and consequently, our behavior and effectiveness. The sources offer that compelling scenario. You have concert tickets with your wife, something important to her. Yeah. But just before you leave, your boss calls, needing you to work late on a critical project. What do?
The answer depends on your center, right?
Exactly. If you're spouse-centered, your main concern is pleasing or not displeasing your wife. You might feel forced to decline work, maybe resentfully, or go to work feeling guilty and worried about her reaction. Your security is fragile, based on her mood. If you're money-centered, your main thought is the overtime pay or a potential raise. You might just tell your wife that economic demands come first. Your decisions are based on financial gain. If you're work-centered, you might be thinking of the career opportunity, patting yourself on the back for putting in extra hours, maybe feeling slightly annoyed by the concert interruption. Your identity is tied to your job. If you're possession-centered, you might think about what the extra income could buy or how working late enhances your reputation as a hard worker.
But if you are principle-centered,
You see things dramatically differently. You have a high degree of security, guidance, wisdom, and power because your center core principles like fairness, integrity, contribution is solid and unchanging. Your security isn't dependent on external factors. Your guidance comes from your internal compass. Your wisdom allows you to see the bigger picture. Your power allows proactive choice. So you might calmly assess the situation. Can someone else handle the work? Can you delegate? Can you go in early tomorrow? Can you have a mature conversation with your boss and your wife, explaining the situation and exploring options? Whatever you choose, because it flows from your principled core, you'll likely feel comfortable with the decision and be able to enjoy whichever activity you end up doing without guilt or resentment. That high degree of security, guidance, wisdom, and power flows from having a solid, unchanging core of principles. It makes you proactive and highly effective.
that principle-centered core sounds like the ideal foundation. So we have habit 1, be proactive, and habit 2, begin with the end in mind, the first creation. What's habit 3?
Habit 3 is put first things first. This is the second creation, the physical creation. It's about running the program you wrote in Habit 2. It's about living it day in and day out.
And this requires.
Primarily, it's a function of your independent will. This is the fourth unique human endowment the sources mention. Independent will is your ability to make decisions, make choices, and then act in accordance with them. It's the power to act rather than be acted upon, to proactively carry out the program you develop through self-awareness, imagination, and conscience. Habit 2. It also requires self-discipline, integrity, and a deep commitment to your priorities, your first things, which stem from your values, not just short-term goals or impulses.
So independent will is key. How do we measure how well we're using it?
The degree to which we develop our independent will is measured by our personal integrity. Integrity here means your ability to make and keep commitments to yourself, to walk your talk. It's about integrating your actions with your values. This is the very essence of proactive growth and fundamental to the character ethic we talked about earlier. It's about making and keeping promises, starting with small ones to yourself.
So if leadership, habit 2, decides what the first things are.
In management, habit 3 is putting them first, day by day, moment by moment. Management is discipline, carrying it out. And this discipline isn't imposed from the outside. It comes from within. It comes from being a disciple, disciplined to your own deep values and purposes. It's having the will, the integrity to subordinate your feelings, your impulses, your moods to those higher values.
That sounds challenging. Most of us are driven by moods sometimes.
We are. But as E.M. Gray found in his study, mentioned in the sources, the common denominator of success is that successful people make a habit of doing things failures don't like to do.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily because they like doing them either, but because their purpose is stronger than their mood or impulse. They subordinate what they don't like to the strength of their purpose.
Purpose over mood. Okay. How does this connect to practical things like time management?
It directly informs a more effective approach to time management, specifically by focusing on Quadrant 2. The sources divide all activities into 4 quadrants based on 2 factors, urgent and important. Quadrant 4 is urgent and important. Crises, pressing problems, deadline-driven projects. These usually act on us. Quadrant 3 is urgent but not important. Interruptions, some calls, some mails, some meetings, many popular activities. These often feel important because they're urgent, but they aren't tied to our core goals. Quadrant 4 is not urgent and not important. Trivia, busy work, some phone calls, time wasters, pleasant activities that don't contribute. We often escape to Quadrant 4 for relief from Quadrants 1st and other. And then there's Quadrant 3.
Quadrant 2. Not urgent, but important.
Exactly. This is where true effectiveness lies. Quadrant 2 includes activities like prevention, PC activities, building relationships, maintaining assets, recognizing new opportunities, long-term planning, exercise, deep learning, personal renewal. These things are crucial for long-term success and well-being, but because they aren't urgent, they're easy to put off.
So highly effective people focus on Quadrant 2.
Yes, they spend significantly more time in Quadrant 2, working on the roots, doing preventative things, building capacity. And the interesting effect is that by investing time in Quadrant 2, e.g. planning, prevention, relationship building, they actually shrink Quadrant 1. Fewer crises erupt because they've been proactive.
But Quadrant 4 and 3 activities, they feel so demanding. They seem to work on us.
They absolutely do. They press in constantly. The urgency factor is hard to ignore. Therefore, to create time for vital Quadrant 2 activities, you must consciously act. You have to be proactive. This means learning to say no to quadrant 3 and 4 activities, things that might be urgent to others or just time wasters, but aren't important to your mission and goals.
Saying no can be really hard, though.
It can be incredibly difficult, especially if you're trying to please others or lack a clear sense of your own priorities. Habit 2. The story of the wife who felt pressured into chairing a committee, even though it conflicted with more important personal and family priorities, illustrates this perfectly. She initially agreed out of obligation, a common quadrant, the third trap, but later, drawing strength from her deeper priorities, her yes burning inside, she found the courage to politely but firmly say no. That no was possible because she had a bigger yes.
So having that clear end in mind from habit 2 is crucial for saying no in habit 3.
Absolutely essential. Your yes to your core priorities gives you the power to say no to other things that distract from them. This leads to what the sources call the fourth generation of self-management, which is a significant advance over earlier, more rigid time management systems, like simple calendars or prioritized task lists.
How is this fourth generation different?
It has several key advances. One, it's principle-centered, connecting your daily actions to your deepest values. Two, it's conscience-directed, helping you organize your life in harmony with your inner compass. Three, it defines your unique mission, including values and long-term goals, giving context to your daily choices. That's habit 2. 4, it helps you achieve balance in your life by identifying key roles like spouse, parent, manager, individual, and setting specific achievable goals within each role on a weekly basis. And 5, it provides greater context through weekly organizing rather than just daily planning. This allows for flexibility and daily adaptation while still keeping your focus on your important quadrant 2 priorities for the week.
So it's less about managing time and more about managing ourselves. More like using a compass than a clock or a rigid map.
Precisely. You're guiding yourself by principles, the compass, not just reacting to urgent demands or sticking rigidly to a schedule, the clock or map. This brings up another critical distinction habit 3 makes. The difference between efficiency and effectiveness, especially when dealing with people.
Ah, right. You can't really be efficient with people in the same way you are with tasks.
You really can't. You think effectiveness with people, you think efficiency with things. Trying to be efficient with a person who needs time to talk through a disagreement or giving a child exactly 10 minutes of quality time on a schedule, it often backfires. It feels transactional, not relational. It can actually damage the PC, the relationship. People are always more important than things or schedules. Sometimes effectiveness requires subordinating your schedule to a higher value, like genuinely connecting with someone who needs you.
And this applies to delegation, too.
Hugely. Habit 3 contrasts two types of delegation. Go for delegation is where you basically tell someone exactly what to do and supervise their methods closely. It's controlling and inefficient. Stewardship delegation, on the other hand, is focused on results, not methods. You clarify the desired outcome, the guidelines, the resources, the accountability, and the consequences, and you trust the individual to figure out the best way to achieve it. The green and clean yard example is perfect here. The father shifted from nagging about methods, Gopher, to defining the result, green and clean, and empowering his son to evaluate his own work, stewardship. This shifts the focus from vertical supervision to a horizontal partnership, releasing tremendous human potential and building production capability, PC, the person's competence and trustworthiness in the process.
Okay, so habits 1, 2, and 3 are the private victories, building that foundation of character and independence. Now, how do we move towards the public victories, towards effective interdependence?
The bridge, really, is understanding that the most important ingredient we bring to any relationship, any interaction, is fundamentally what we are, our character. If our words and actions seem to come from superficial techniques, personality ethic, rather than from our inner core, character ethic, others will instinctively sense that duplicity, that inconsistency. And when they sense that, you simply can't build or sustain the foundation of trust necessary for effective interdependence.
Trust is the key, then.
Trust is absolutely central. And this brings us to another powerful metaphor used in the sources, the emotional bank account, EBA.
The emotional bank account. Okay, tell us about that.
Think of it like a financial bank account, but for relationships. It represents the amount of trust that's been built up. You make deposits into this account through things like courtesy, kindness, honesty, keeping commitments, understanding the other person, apologizing sincerely when you make a withdrawal. These deposits build a reserve of trust.
And what happens when that account, that EBA, is high?
When the trust account is high, communication becomes easy, instant, and effective. You don't have to measure every word. You can even make mistakes sometimes, and that high reserve of trust will compensate for it. People give you the benefit of the doubt.
And when the EBA is low or overdrawn,
Then intimacy is gone. If you have a habit of showing discourtesy, disrespect, cutting people off, betraying trust, ignoring them, you make withdrawals. Eventually, you overdraw the account. The trust level becomes very low. And the relationship becomes characterized by tension, defensiveness, guarded communication, feeling like you're walking on eggshells, maybe even politicking or overt conflict. Many organizations, families, and marriages become filled with this kind of Cold War or even open warfare if trust isn't actively built and sustained through consistent deposits.
that's a really vivid metaphor. Can problems actually build the account?
Interestingly, yes. The sources suggest a profound paradigm shift here. In interdependent situations, every P problem is a PC opportunity. Every problem related to production, P, is a chance to build production capability, PC, specifically by making deposits in the emotional bank account. So when parents see their children's problems not as burdensome irritations, but as opportunities to understand, to help, to invest in the relationship, make EBA deposits, it transforms the interaction. Similarly, that example of the department store chain viewing customer complaints not as annoyances, but as golden opportunities to build loyalty through exceptional service and problem solving. Huge EBA deposits. This shifts interactions from being merely transactional, what's in it for me, to being deeply transformational, creating strong bonds of trust and loyalty.
Wow, seeing problems as opportunities to build trust. That's powerful. So with that emotional bank account concept firmly in mind, we're ready for the public victories, starting with habit 4. Think win-win.
Exactly. Habit 4 isn't just a technique. It's presented as a total philosophy of human interaction. It flows directly from a high EBA. The sources share that story of the company president who genuinely wanted cooperation among his managers. He talked about it constantly. But his reward system unintentionally set them up in a competition, a race to Bermuda, where only one manager could win, meaning everyone else lost.
So his system contradicted his words.
Completely. He was trying to get the fruits of cooperation, the P he wanted, from a paradigm of competition, the PC reality he'd created.
Yeah.
The solution wasn't just more talk about cooperation. It required changing the root, not just trying to fix the fruit. He needed to develop information and reward systems that actually reinforced cooperation, that made it a win-win for everyone to work together.
So what are the alternatives to win-win?
The sources outline 6 paradigms, but let's focus on the most common ones we bump into. There's win-lose, the authoritarian approach. I get my way, you don't. This is often rooted in conditional love, comparison, using position or power. There's lose-win, the appeasement approach. Go ahead, have your way with me, step on me. Often comes from low self-esteem, seeking popularity, burying feelings. There's lose-lose, which happens when two stubborn win-lose people interact, or when someone becomes so focused on making the other person lose, like in revenge, that they destroy themselves too. Think of a bitter divorce. There's win, where someone just focuses on getting what they want without even considering the other person's perspective. And then there's win-win.
Win-win. Seeking mutual benefit.
Yes, it's a frame of mind and heart that constantly seeks mutual benefit in all human interactions. It means agreements or solutions are mutually beneficial, mutually satisfying. All parties feel good about the decision and committed to the action plan. It sees life as a cooperative arena, not a competitive one. It's based on the paradigm of the abundance mentality.
Abundance mentality? What's that?
The belief that there's plenty out there for everybody. Success doesn't have to come at someone else's expense. Win-win is about finding a third alternative, not just your way or my way, but a better way, a higher way that often emerges through synergistic interaction.
And the highest form is win-win or no deal.
That's considered the highest expression, especially for crucial long-term relationships. It basically means if we can't find a solution that benefits both of us, then let's agree to disagree agreeably, no deal. This preserves the relationship because no one feels forced into a bad deal. It requires real maturity and security.
What kind of character traits do you need to consistently think win-win?
3 essential traits are highlighted. First, integrity. This is built through habits 1, 2, and 3. It's knowing yourself, your values, what truly constitutes a win for you that aligns with those values, and having the ability to make and keep meaningful commitments to yourself and others. Without integrity, win-win is just a superficial technique. Second is maturity. Maturity in this context is defined as the balance between courage and consideration.
Courage and consideration.
Yes. Courage is the willingness to speak your thoughts and feelings, to stand up for your convictions. Consideration is being aware of and respectful of the thoughts and feelings of others. Many psychological tests actually evaluate this balance. It's about being both nice and tough. In fact, the sources say win-win is twice as tough as win-lose because it requires both high courage and high consideration. High courage but low consideration leads to win-lose. High consideration but low courage leads to lose-win. True maturity integrates both.
Okay. Integrity and maturity. What's the third?
The third is that abundance mentality we mentioned, the paradigm that there is plenty out there for everybody. This contrasts sharply with the scarcity mentality.
Scarcity mentality, seeing life as a limited pie.
Exactly. People with a scarcity mentality feel like if someone else gets a big piece, there's less for them. They struggle to share recognition, credit, power, or profit. They find it hard to be genuinely happy for others' successes, even friends or family, because it feels like something is being taken away from them. This leads to comparing, competing, criticizing. The abundance mentality, conversely, flows from a deep inner sense of personal worth and security built through habits 1, 2, 3. It leads to sharing prestige, recognition, profits, decision-making. It opens up possibilities, options, alternatives, and creativity. It allows you to genuinely appreciate the uniqueness of others. Building win-win relationships sounds like it depends heavily on that emotional bank account again. Absolutely. You need trust, a high EBA. Yeah. Without trust, the best you can really achieve is compromise, which is often lose-lose or low-level win-win. With a high EBA, credibility isn't an issue. You can get deep into the issues, understand each other's perspectives fully, and engage in the kind of open, mutual learning that leads to true synergy and win-win solutions.
What about dealing with people who are stuck in a win-lose mindset? That seems like the real challenge.
That is the real test of win-win. The sources advise focusing on your circle of influence. You make genuine deposits into the emotional bank account with them, courtesy, respect, appreciation for their perspective, even if you disagree. You listen more deeply than perhaps they expect. You express yourself with greater courage, but also with consideration. You stay proactive, not reactive to their win-lose energy. The stronger your own character, integrity, maturity, abundance mentality, the more positive influence you can exert, even on difficult people. Sometimes, though, the best option might be win-win or no deal.
And win-win agreements are important too.
Crucial. They define and direct the win-win interaction, shifting the paradigm from vertical supervision, do this because I said so, to horizontal partnership. Let's agree on the results we want. These are often called performance agreements or partnership agreements. They focus clearly on desired results, guidelines, resources, accountability, and consequences, but they leave the methods largely up to the individual or team. This releases tremendous human potential and creates synergy because people are committed to results they help define.
And finally, systems need to support win-win.
Yes, this is critical. Often the problem isn't the people, it's the system they're working in. If you put good people in bad systems, you get bad results. You have to water the flowers you want to grow. Businesses, schools, even families need to examine their systems' training, planning, communication, budgeting, rewards to ensure they actually support and reward win-win cooperation, not undermine it with win-lose competition.
Okay, win-win is a huge shift. Now, moving into the heart of communication itself, the sources present habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Yes, and this habit is presented as the key to effective interpersonal communication.
But isn't it natural to want to be understood first? To get our point across?
It's certainly our tendency. We have a strong tendency to rush in, to give advice, to fix things, to share our own autobiography, often before we've even taken the time to truly diagnose the situation, to deeply understand the other person's perspective and feelings. The example of the parent immediately jumping in with advice for their child about school problems illustrates this perfectly. The child tries to express feelings, school is for the birds, and the parent immediately responds with logic and advice. You should apply yourself more, completely missing the underlying emotional message.
We don't really listen, do we? Not deeply.
Very few of us do, naturally. The sources point out we spend years learning how to read, write, and speak the skills of being understood. But how much training have most of us had in listening? Especially in listening with the intent to truly deeply understand another human being from their frame of reference, not just waiting for our turn to talk. This is called empathic listening.
Empathic listening. And again, technique isn't enough here either.
No. Just like with the personality ethic, if we try to use listening techniques, like reflecting words back, without a genuine character foundation of wanting to understand, without a high EBA, others will sense it. They'll feel manipulated or that you're being insincere. They won't feel safe enough to open up and share what's really going on. Our real influence, the sources emphasize again and again, comes from our example, our actual conduct, which flows naturally from our character. If our private actions don't align with our public words, if we aren't trustworthy, habits 1, 2, 3, it's very hard for others to believe our attempts to understand them. Habit 5, our character radiates, determining whether we are instinctively trusted or distrusted.
Seek first to understand. That feels like it requires a lot of inner security.
It absolutely does, which is why it follows the private victories. You need that core strength to be able to suspend your own agenda, your own autobiography, and step into someone else's frame of reference without feeling threatened or needing to immediately correct them.
Okay, so understanding first, habit 5, naturally leads us to habit 6, synergize. What exactly is synergy in this context?
Synergy is essentially when the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. It's 1 plus 1 equals 3 or 10 or 100. It's about creative cooperation. It's the habit of finding that third alternative we mentioned in win-win, a solution that is better than what any single party initially proposed. It's not just compromise where everyone gives up something and maybe feels a bit dissatisfied. Synergy is creative. It transcends the original positions to find something new and better.
Can you give an example?
The sources use that simple example of a couple planning a fishing trip. He wants to go fishing in a remote area. She wants to visit her ailing mother several hours away. A compromise might be splitting the time or one person giving in. A synergistic solution they found was to find a place to camp and fish near where her mother lived. This met his need for outdoor time and fishing, and her need for family connection and support. It wasn't just a transaction, it was a transformation that built the relationship PC while achieving the goals.
That sounds ideal, but what happens when there isn't synergy?
Well, often you get negative synergy. Think about situations where tremendous energy is expended in conflict, defensiveness, protecting turf, politicking, second-guessing. That's 1 plus 1 equals 12 or even less. People in low-trust environments often try to apply more pressure, more logic, their own, more control, instead of trying to understand the resistance and get a foot off the brake, as the sources put it.
What prevents synergy?
According to the sources, highly dependent people, or people who are insecure, low private victory development, really struggle with synergy. They might talk win-win technique, but they don't truly listen with empathy. Habit 5. They want to manipulate or clone others into their way of thinking. They fail to realize, or perhaps they fear, that the very strength of a relationship, the potential for synergy, lies in valuing the different perspectives, experiences, and strengths people bring. As the sources beautifully state, sameness is not oneness. Uniformity is not unity. The essence of synergy is to value differences mental, emotional, psychological, and build on them.
So valuing differences is key, and the ability to do that comes from within.
Exactly. The key to interpersonal synergy with others, actually lies in interpersonal synergy within ourselves. That inner security, that sense of worth, comes from internalizing the principles of the first 3 habits: proactivity, vision, integrity, discipline. That provides the security needed to be open, authentic, and vulnerable enough to genuinely value differences. It cultivates the abundance mentality. It also fosters whole brain thinking.
Whole brain thinking.
Yeah, integrating our intuitive, creative, holistic right brain thinking with our analytical, logical, verbal left brain thinking. When we can tap into both sides, we create a kind of psychic synergy within ourselves. This enables us to tackle problems that require not just logic, but creativity, insight, and seeing the whole picture.
Is there an example of the disconnect?
Yes. The anecdote about the husband, who is very left brain and logical, trying desperately to get specifics from his more right brain intuitive wife about why she felt their communication was bad. He kept demanding data, examples. She was trying to communicate feelings, the overall pattern, the gestalt, the whole relationship dynamic. He couldn't grasp it through his purely logical lens because he wasn't accessing his own right brain capacity for empathy and understanding the whole picture. That lack of interpersonal synergy hindered their interpersonal communication and potential for synergy.
That makes sense. Integrating both sides within ourselves helps us connect better with others who might operate differently. Okay, we've covered the private victories, 1, 2, 3, and the public victories, 4, 5, 6. What ties it all together?
That brings us to the final habit. Habit 7, sharpen the saw.
Sharpen the saw. This sounds like self-care.
It is, but in a very holistic and balanced way. Habit 7 is all about balanced self-renewal. It's the principle of taking time regularly to renew ourselves in the 4 fundamental dimensions of our nature. First, the physical dimension. Caring for our physical body through beneficial exercise, good nutrition, proper rest, and stress management. Second, the spiritual dimension. Renewing our connection to our core values and purpose. This could be through meditation, prayer, spending time in nature, immersing ourselves in great music or literature, whatever inspires and uplifts you, connects you to your center. Third, the mental dimension. Continuous learning and engaging our minds. Things like reading broadly and deeply, writing, journaling, planning, visualizing, seeking out new knowledge and perspectives, keeping mentally sharp. And fourth, the social emotional dimension. This is about developing meaningful relationships and practicing the public victory habits, 4, 5, 6, consistently, making deposits in emotional bank accounts, seeking win-win, understanding others empathically, synergizing.
All four dimensions need attention.
Yes, and crucially, the focus is on balanced renewal. While each dimension is important, optimal effectiveness comes from nurturing all four in a wise and balanced way. Neglecting any one area will negatively impact the rest. If you burn out physically, your mental and emotional states suffer. If you neglect relationships, your overall well-being declines. This applies powerfully to organizations too, by the way.
How so?
Organizations focused only on the economic, physical dimension often suffer from low trust, poor communication, and negative synergy, social-emotional neglect. Those focused heavily on the social-emotional human relations aspect might lack efficiency or accountability. Economic mental neglect. Those that fail to invest in developing the talents and minds of their people, mental psychological neglect, can face resistance, low creativity, and high turnover. Balanced renewal, investing in the physical, economic, spiritual, purpose integrity, mental, talent development, and social-emotional relationships culture ensures that the organization's creative energy is used for growth and productivity, not wasted on internal conflict and friction.
So how do we integrate this renewal into our busy lives?
The sources strongly advocate for the daily private victory. This means committing to a minimum of 1 hour a day dedicated specifically to renewing the physical, spiritual, and mental dimensions, often best done first thing in the morning. This hour, a clear quadrant 2 focus, important but not urgent, is the single most powerful investment you can make in yourself. It builds that intrinsic security, that self-mastery, that personal integrity, and this inner strength, this high PPC balance within yourself, then allows you to approach your interactions with others, the daily public victory, much more effectively with an abundance mentality, genuinely valuing differences, seeking win-win, listening empathically.
So sharpening the saw enables all the other habits.
It absolutely does. It keeps you fresh, centered, and capable of living the other 6 habits consistently. It fuels the whole process. This consistent practice of all 7 habits leads to an upward spiral of growth, learning, commitment, and continuous improvement. You learn, you commit, you do. You learn more, you commit at a higher level, you do better. It's an ongoing process guided by our conscience.
Conscience comes up again here. How does it guide this upward spiral?
Conscience is described as that unique human endowment that senses our congruence, or lack thereof, with correct principles. It urges us towards them. But like a muscle, the conscience needs to be educated and trained. This requires concentration, discipline, expanding our minds, and consistent, honest living. The sources suggest doing this by regularly feasting on inspiring literature, thinking noble thoughts, and above all, living in harmony with its still small voice.
And there's a warning, too, about neglecting the conscience.
Yes, a strong warning. Just as consistently, eating junk food can ruin an athlete's physical condition. Consistently consuming things that are crude, vulgar, or pornographic can breed an inner darkness that numbs our higher sensibilities, our conscience. This can replace our genuine, principle-based conscience with a mere social conscience, a fear of being found out, rather than a deep understanding of what is truly right and beneficial versus wrong and harmful. As Dag Hammarskjöld profoundly stated, and the sources quote, "You cannot play with the animal in you without becoming wholly animal. Play with falsehood without forfeiting your right to truth. Play with cruelty without losing your sensitivity of mind. He who wants to keep his garden tidy doesn't reserve a plot for weeds."
That's incredibly sobering. Protect the garden of the mind and spirit.
Absolutely. Yeah. Ultimately, there is no shortcut to developing these capacities for effectiveness, for living a principle-centered life. The law of the harvest governs. We always reap what we sow, no more, no less. It takes time, effort, patience, investment. People who neglect this balanced self-renewal, who don't proactively sharpen their saw, they eventually become being lived, just reacting to external scripts, pressures, and circumstances, rather than acting from their unique inner endowments and consciously choosing their own path. They remain unaware of the vast dormant potential within them.
Wow. Okay, that brings us full circle. So after this deep dive, what does this all mean for you, the listener? It seems this exploration into the roots of effectiveness, the power of our paradigms, and this fundamental shift to an inside-out approach reveals something crucial. Lasting change isn't about those quick fixes or just learning superficial techniques, is it?
Not at all. It's about fundamental shifts. shifts in our character, in our deepest values, and ultimately in how we see the world and ourselves. It really means taking responsibility for your own first creation, that mental blueprint of your life, guided by principles before you even attempt to build the second creation, your physical reality, your relationships, your results.
It sounds like an invitation, really.
It is an invitation to open your own gate of change, as Marilyn Ferguson apparently put it, something only you can do. Your growth, the sources suggest, will likely be evolutionary, step by step, incremental. It requires patience. But the net effect over time can be truly revolutionary, leading to significantly increased self-confidence, healed relationships, greater influence, and a truly integrated, effective, and meaningful life. It's about building that principle-centered core within you that is essentially changeless, giving you the inner security to face life's inevitable challenges with peace and even exhilaration.
And the encouraging part is you are not your habits. You can change. You can replace old, perhaps self-defeating patterns with new habits of effectiveness, habits that build trust-based relationships. It's clearly not easy, and it's certainly not a quick fix, but maybe that's the point. As Thomas Paine noted, that which we obtain too easily, we esteem too lightly. This profound investment in yourself and your character is perhaps the greatest, most valuable investment you can ever make.
I think that's the most compelling takeaway from today's deep dive.
Hmm.
True, lasting change, whether it's in your personal life, your relationships, or your work, begins not by trying to change what's out there. It begins by profoundly changing what's within you, your paradigms, your character, your habits, to the powerful, ongoing, upward journey of self-renewal and growth, leading towards a principle-centered life.
So we encourage you to ponder what aspect of your own map, your own paradigms, might be subtly misguiding your efforts right now. And maybe more importantly, what one inside-out step, perhaps related to sharpening the saw, are you ready to take today?
And as always, thank you so much for joining us for another deep dive into the ideas that shape our world. Until next time, keep digging.